I'll probably be provocative. Is everyone okay? Long morning. He said when he introduced me earlier, we're where the rubber meets the road, but I think it's really where the solar meets the system. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, is when the solar meets the system and some of the challenges that we have there and some of the things that I hope you all will be working on to solve in the next few years. So a little bit about Southern California Edison. We have a 50,000 square mile service territory, cover most of Southern California down to Laguna Beach. We come up here to Santa Barbara and then go within the San Joaquin Valley. We have a population of about 14 million residents in our service territory and 4.9 million customers. We have been a leader in renewable energy and also in energy efficiency, plug-in and hybrid electric vehicles, and so we take a leadership role in a lot of these emerging technology areas. One of the things, and Bill Brinkman talked about this earlier, we have a lot of solutions, but they're not necessarily cost effective. So as a utility, what we need to do is to balance three things. One of them, and the first, is system reliability. When you turn the lights on or the air conditioner on, you want it to go on every single time. So one of our first priorities is to keep the system reliable so that when you turn the lights on, they come on. Secondly is price stability, and that comes into the cost competitiveness. If we have bills that people can't afford or don't want to afford and want to move to other states, then we're not sustainable, and so that's a key focus. And the third is being able to do the first two and support public policy. So public policy around renewables, public policy around energy efficiency, being able to support that public policy while still maintaining reliability and price stability for our customers. We are the large, we purchased, there were some numbers earlier on solar. We purchase 80% of the solar that's purchased by utilities in the United States. So we are one of the largest renewable purchasers in the country. Interestingly enough, we're spending this panel talking about solar. Currently, 53% of our renewable purchases are geothermal. So there's a lot of room for growth in both solar and wind. California has had a policy of 33% renewable power. It was previously an order of the governor, our previous governor. Recently, legislation was passed to have 33% renewables by 2020 in California, and that was signed by the governor a few weeks ago. If you look at this chart, today we are right around, not quite at 20%, but very close. So we're purchasing 15 billion kilowatt hours of renewables. In 2020, that number goes to 28.3, and it's not just the increase from 20 to 33, it's an 89% increase in the amount of kilowatt hours that we will purchase because of the growth in sales during that time period. So it's really a much larger increase than you think if you're just talking from 20 to 33. This is the mix of solar that we're seeing. And in 2009, we had primarily solar thermal, and you see that curve there. If you look in 2011, we now have quite a bit of ground mount, solar ground mount. The little yellow one at the bottom is solar PV rooftop. So while it's growing, it's not growing really in great numbers in terms of gigawatt hours. So after we get to the dollar per watt, which is a great goal, and I'm now encouraged that we're going to get there, the utility, and most utilities would operate the same way. When we're purchasing power, we're looking for least cost, best fit. So least cost, if we get to $1 a watt for solar, that's going to match the other resources from a cost standpoint. So you're in the bucket in terms of cost. Best fit then becomes, what is the load profile of the customers, right? What's the load we're trying to serve? And which of those resources at the lowest cost are going to fit that need, the demand curve that we have? And so one of the things I'm going to talk a little bit about is the challenge around solar and wind as well is intermittency of supply. Because the electric system, until we get those great batteries working at scale, the electric system has to be balanced at all times. So the demand, when you turn on the light, has to be matched by generation on the other side. And if it's not, then you have problems on the system. So this is how we purchase power, and we're looking at this least cost, best fit. $1 a watt gets you there for least cost, and we have to work on the best fit, which I'll talk about. So solar is a great resource, and in most cases it matches our load profile because our load is most during the hot summer days when the sun is shining. The issue you have is intermittency. So everything's going along, sun's shining, a cloud comes over, and the solar drops. You still have the same demand. Customers are pulling on the system the same demand, and all of a sudden you lost a lot of your power. You have to have other generation to take up that slack, otherwise you have a voltage problem on your system. So this is one of the issues with both solar and wind that we and all of you are working on to try to solve. One of the solutions to that is the batteries. So we are testing in Tehachapi, which is where there's going to be a lot of wind resources here in Southern California. We're putting in a battery storage. This is a joint project with Department of Energy, testing the ability of this to store energy and to be able to ride through when the wind suddenly stops. Now this is a $54 million project, and it's about 8 megawatts for 4 hours. So it's not a great deal of energy, but it'll begin to let us understand how battery storage or storage will help ride through the intermittency of these new generation of the solar and the wind. The other issue that we come across with solar in particular is, and I just talked about the need for the system to be balanced at all times. So when you get, and this is more around the distributed solar, rooftop solar, commercial building solar, you have issues. So the system, the grid was built 125 years ago and all through that time for main generating power plants to generate power and deliver it through the system to the end-use customer. So it was built as a one-way flow. So when we put solar around rooftops, commercial buildings, and they're in some cases selling back into the grid, you have a two-way system. And what I talked about earlier, the intermittency issue, has issues for the grid as well. So, you know, you're in your home, your solar, sun is shining, everything's working, you have your air conditioning going, and all of a sudden the cloud goes over, right? So your solar on your house dropped. We're still pulling energy in to serve your house, and what happens is you can get real voltage fluctuations on the system. And that can be on the transmission system and the distribution system, which can cause instability. If it's bad enough, it will bring the system down. So if we get to the $1 a watt, right, now we have to determine how do we make the system capable of dealing with this intermittency and this flow of power that it wasn't built for. So part of what I'm hoping a lot of you are working on in research, maybe in another area, is on the controls in the systems, be able to manage this intermittency of power flow and, you know, keeping voltage stable and making sure that, in addition, that workers are safe. Because when you have backfeed on the power system, right, that can be a danger for workers as well. So this is a challenge primarily for the local solar, but it's one that we really need to solve to get massive amounts of solar out there. One of the things that we're working on with many partners to help try to understand some of these issues and solve them is we have a smart grid demonstration project in Irvine, which again is a partnership with the Department of Energy. One of the things that we see is that many of the technologies work and are excellent here or in the lab. When you put them into an integrated system, they behave differently. And so this smart grid project is to really demonstrate a lot of the technologies in a total ecosystem. So we're looking at, we will have energy storage here. We will have some blocks of houses that have solar on every one of them. We will have energy storage, battery energy storage. We're putting smart controls on the distribution system. And then we're doing some houses that are super energy efficient. So what we'll be able to do, this will be finished in 2012 in terms of the build out. What we'll be able to do from that is to tell how do all of these technologies that in and of themselves are very good, how do they work together in an integrated grid? Because it has to be an integrated grid and it has to work together because people are not willing to have only solar on their house and when that stops, not have electricity. That's not an acceptable outcome for most people. So we need to figure out how all of the technologies work together in an integrated grid and work with the vast infrastructure that we already have, because to the cost point that Mr. Brinkman brought up earlier, people are only willing to pay so much to make all of this work. So we need to figure out how to make it work in a cost-effective way. So thank you.